Sarah was going through some of the files they'd collected over the past few weeks, reviewing old police reports and witness statements she had skimmed earlier. Something caught her eye, a line that seemed out of place in one of the earliest reports about Lily's disappearance. It wasn't the content itself that made her pause, it was the name at the bottom of the page, a name she had never noticed before, a name that didn't belong in the report at all. Her heart skipped a beat as she traced the name with her finger, Detective John Matthews. But John hadn't been involved in the initial stages of the investigation. He'd only appeared later, when things had started to get complicated. So why was his name listed in this report, long before he had any reason to be? It was a small detail, but it made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Was it an oversight? Or had John been involved from the very beginning, pulling strings behind the scenes in ways they hadn't understood? Sarah's mind raced as she considered the implications. Could John have known Lily before the investigation even began? Had he been manipulating the entire case, planting false leads, and shaping the investigation to steer them in the wrong direction? As she turned the page to dig deeper, the truth came crashing down in a way she never could have imagined. A hidden note, wedged between the pages of the report, caught her attention. It was a short message, scribbled in a hurried hand, almost as if someone had written it in a panic. "She's not dead. She's alive. Stop looking." The shock of the words hit her like a punch to the gut. Everything Sarah had believed about Lily's death, the theory they had spent so much time chasing, was based on a lie. Lily wasn't dead. She was still out there, somewhere. And somehow, John knew. In a panic, Sarah called Michael, her voice trembling as she explained the discovery. He rushed over, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. They both stood in stunned silence as the magnitude of the realization sunk in. What if Lily's disappearance wasn't part of some elaborate murder plot? What if they had been chasing ghosts all along, misled by someone they thought they could trust? They couldn't trust the evidence. They couldn't trust the witnesses' hell. They couldn't even trust each other anymore. It felt like every step they'd taken had led them in the wrong direction, and the truth, whatever it was slipping further and further from their grasp. But just as Sarah was about to voice the next logical question, where was Lily? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Michael opened it to find a familiar face, Detective Matthews, standing there with his usual calm demeanor. But this time, there was something different about him. His eyes, usually cool and measured, were wild with a kind of fear Sarah had never seen before. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his voice low and urgent. "We need to talk," he said, and without another word, he handed them a small, crumpled envelope. Inside, there was a single photo, one they had never seen before. It was a picture of Lily, alive and well, taken only a few days ago, standing outside a building that Sarah recognized instantly, a run-down warehouse on the outskirts of town. The photo had been taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking Lily's face. She was staring directly at the camera, as though she knew someone was watching her. The photo was dated yesterday. Michael took a step back, his face pale as he processed the new reality before him. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his voice cracking. John didn't answer immediately. Instead, he seemed to struggle with something, guilt perhaps, or fear, before speaking again, his words heavy with a truth Sarah wasn't ready to hear. "I wasn't supposed to be involved in this case," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I couldn't stay out of it. The truth is, I've been working on something far bigger than you realize. The case. It's not about Lily anymore. It's about something much darker, something that goes way beyond this town. You two have been chasing a decoy, a distraction. I've been trying to keep you from digging deeper, but it's too late now. You've seen too much. You need to stop." His warning hit them like a wave, but it was the next words that shattered everything they thought they knew. "Lily isn't just alive. She's the key to something bigger, something that could destroy everything we've worked for." And now, you're in the middle of it, whether you want to be or not. The room seemed to close in around them. Everything felt like it was falling apart, and the pieces Sarah and Michael had been trying to put together for weeks were suddenly irrelevant. Lily's disappearance, John's secret involvement, it all made sense now, but not in the way they expected. The mystery they thought they were solving wasn't the real mystery at all. But just when they think things can't get worse, the story takes another unexpected turn, one that shakes them to their core and makes everything they thought they knew feel like a lie. Michael's daughter, Emma, has been found alive, but disoriented and claiming to have no memory of where she's been. Her return should have been a relief, but the strange, cold look in her eyes tells a different story. She's not the same girl who walked out of their home weeks ago. Emma's behavior grows more erratic by the day, and when Michael tries to get answers from her, she speaks in cryptic riddles that only add to his confusion. But the most unsettling part is when she reveals that she's been receiving messages, just like the ones Sarah got mysterious, threatening warnings to stop the investigation or face severe consequences. Someone has been keeping tabs on Emma, watching her, just as they had been watching Sarah and Michael. As Michael struggles to protect his daughter while still pursuing the case, he begins to fear the worst, that Emma might not just be an innocent victim, but a pawn in a much larger game, one that goes deeper than he could ever have imagined. Meanwhile, Sarah finds herself drawn into a new twist. After their confrontation with John Matthews, she starts questioning everything. In a last-ditch effort to get to the bottom of his strange behavior, she digs into his personal history, hoping to uncover anything that could explain his recent oddities. What she finds is a shocking connection between John and Lily Hayes that she hadn't seen coming. Years ago, before Lily's disappearance, John had been involved in a highly secretive operation that was never publicly acknowledged. On paper, it seemed like a routine investigation, but what Sarah uncovers reveals a web of lies that links Joan to several key players in the conspiracy surrounding Lily's death. As she pieces together the fragments of John's past, she stumbles upon a crucial detail that no one had ever mentioned before. John and Lily had once been in a brief but intense romantic relationship. The timing of their affair coincides with the time when Lily began to uncover troubling secrets that, if exposed, could bring down some of the most powerful people in the town. Sarah feels the walls closing in again, unsure if John is trying to protect her or if he's playing a much more dangerous game. The more she digs, the more she realizes that everyone, including John, is hiding something, and trust is a luxury she can't afford anymore. As Sarah and Michael connected again the next day, trying to make sense of the new evidence, they were both on edge, their every movement shadowed by the heavy weight of the threats they were receiving. They decided to meet at a safe location, away from prying eyes, to discuss their next steps. But as Sarah pulled up to the cafe, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A familiar figure, someone they both trusted, was sitting at a table near the window. It was John Matthews, the very person they had suspected of playing a double game. But this time, there was something new about him, something that made Sarah's stomach drop. A briefcase, tucked under his arm, held in a way that made it clear it contained something valuable, something worth hiding. As she stared at him through the window, she caught a glimpse of something else: John's eyes, watching her with a cold, unreadable expression. She felt exposed, like he knew she was watching him, like he was waiting for her to make the first move. It was a chilling moment that froze her in place. The web they were tangled in was far more complicated than they ever could have imagined, and the people they thought they could trust were now their greatest threats. The fear was suffocating, gnawing at every corner of their minds. As the clock ticked down, Sarah and Michael realized they were no longer just chasing a case, they were fighting for their survival. The mystery that had once seemed so simple was now a monster of deception, betrayal, and secrets. And every time they thought they were close to finding the truth, something darker emerged from the shadows. They were no longer in control. The game had changed, and they were trapped in it, with no clear way out. And just when they thought they could take a breath, something drastic happened, something that would send them spiraling down a path they couldn't escape from. Just when Sarah and Michael thought they were closing in on the truth, everything they thought they knew about the case and about the people they trusted crumbled in an instant. The tension had been building for days, each new discovery adding to the weight of the mystery, each turn of the investigation feeling like it was pushing them closer to a dangerous edge. But the revelation that came next was something neither of them saw coming. It began innocuously enough. One thing is certain, the truth is far darker than they ever imagined, and it might just destroy everything they've worked for. As the days wear on, Sarah and Michael find themselves growing more desperate, their once clear path to solving the case now clouded by confusion and doubt. Just when they think they have a solid lead, an unexpected obstacle appears, and it sends their investigation into a tailspin. Sarah receives an anonymous tip-off late one evening, someone claiming to have critical evidence about Lily's disappearance. Desperate for any breakthrough, she arranges a meeting in a quiet park, hoping this will finally be the break they need. But when she arrives, the person never shows. Instead, she finds a single cryptic message written on the park bench: "You're looking in the wrong place." The chilling words hang in the air, and it's clear that someone is watching them, someone who wants them off this trail. That same night, Michael's key witness, a former friend of Lily's, who had promised to share incriminating information, suddenly disappears. His phone goes silent, his apartment is empty, and no one seems to know where he went. It's as if he vanished into thin air, and both detectives are left reeling, unsure of who to trust and how deep the conspiracy really goes. But the obstacles don't stop there. As the investigation continues, a strange pattern begins to emerge. Important pieces of evidence start to go missing, files vanish from the police department's database, and physical evidence from the crime scene is inexplicably tampered with. At first, they chalk it up to bad luck, but as it happens again and again, they can't ignore the sinking feeling that someone is actively working against them. The most baffling moment occurs when Sarah's phone receives a mysterious voicemail, one that seems to be recorded from inside the police station itself. The voice is muffled, distorted, but clear enough to send chills down her spine. "If you keep digging, you'll regret it." The message leaves her rattled, and she knows they've crossed a line they can't come back from. With their trust in the system wavering, Sarah and Michael decide to take a step back and reassess everything. It's then that Sarah starts to notice something odd. One of their closest allies, Detective John Matthews, a seasoned cop who's been on the force for over 20 years, has been acting strangely. John has always been a reliable source of support, offering advice and sharing intel when they needed it most. But recently, he's been evasive, dodging their questions about Lily's case and acting like he's hiding something. When Sarah presses him about the missing witness, Joan's usual calm demeanor falters for a brief moment, and it's enough to raise Sarah's suspicions. Could Joan be involved in some way? Could he have been playing them from the start, feeding them false leads and steering them away from the truth? The idea seems unthinkable, but the more Sarah thinks about it, the more the pieces don't fit. She decides to confront him, but John denies everything, his smooth exterior hiding something much darker beneath the surface. And just as Sarah begins to push him for answers, Michael gets a call that shakes him to his core. His estranged daughter, Emma, has gone missing. He can't believe it, and the timing couldn't be worse. Is Emma's disappearance tied to the case? Or is someone trying to throw them off track by targeting Michael's personal life? The tension is mounting, and the further they go, the more they realize just how many people are invested in keeping the truth hidden. The walls are closing in, and with every new piece of information, they feel as though they're being pulled into a game they weren't prepared for. They're not just uncovering a murder plot anymore. They're unraveling a conspiracy that reaches far beyond anything they could have imagined. As Sarah and Michael try to make sense of the chaos, the one thing that keeps them grounded is their determination to solve this case, no matter what. But with their lives in danger, and everyone they know potentially involved, they begin to wonder, who can they trust? And what is the cost of uncovering the truth if it means losing everything they hold dear? The case takes yet another unexpected turn when they uncover a shocking detail about Lily's past, something that links her death to a series of events no one could have predicted. But just when they think they're close to the final piece of the puzzle, the unthinkable happens. Someone they thought was a trusted ally betrays them in the worst possible way. And with the truth slipping further from their grasp, Sarah and Michael are left to face the terrifying reality that they might not make it out of this alive. As Sarah and Michael try to process the latest betrayal, the tension between them grows palpable. With no one left to trust, they push ahead, fueled only by their commitment to finding the truth. In a quiet, unassuming town, something far more sinister is unfolding than anyone could have imagined. When two seasoned detectives, Sarah Thompson and Michael Rivers, are called to investigate a routine case of a missing person, they quickly realize that this is no ordinary disappearance. What begins as a simple search for a missing woman spirals into something much darker, a twisted conspiracy, a web of lies, and a murder plot straight out of a movie. From the moment they step onto the scene, Sarah and Michael are thrust into a world where nothing is as it seems, and every clue they uncover leads them deeper into the shadows. As they dig into the life of the woman who vanished, they uncover a secret society, a trail of suspicious deaths, and a tangled web of betrayal that could rock the very foundation of the community they thought they knew. But just when they believe they've pieced it all together, a shocking revelation turns their investigation upside down. Someone close to them is hiding a dangerous secret, and their every move is being watched. The question isn't just who is behind the plot, but who they can truly trust. With time running out and the stakes higher than ever, Sarah and Michael must race against the clock to stop a murder before it's too late. But there's one twist they never saw coming, a twist that could change everything. As they prepare to confront the truth, the pieces of the puzzle suddenly begin to shift, and they're left wondering, is the real danger still out there, or is it already in the room with them? Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. As the investigation picks up steam, Sarah and Michael begin to realize that this case is far more personal than they initially thought. Both detectives have been through their fair share of complicated cases, but this one feels different, like a weight they can't shake off, a mystery that refuses to be solved no matter how many clues they gather. Sarah, a methodical and sharp-minded investigator, has always relied on her ability to read people, to sense when something isn't quite right. But this time, something is off in a way she can't put into words. Her recent troubled past, filled with personal loss and painful memories, has made her more determined than ever to prove herself, not just to her team, but to herself. Michael, on the other hand, has always been a bit of a lone wolf. Having recently gone through a bitter divorce and struggling to maintain a relationship with his teenage daughter, he's found solace in his work, burying his emotions behind a wall of professionalism. His sharp instincts and quick thinking have served him well in countless cases, but now, as the layers of deception begin to unfold, his own personal demons seem to creep up, making him second-guess everything around him. As they delve deeper into the missing woman's life, they uncover a series of strange, unsettling connections. The woman, Lily Hayes, was well liked by most, but there were whispers about her involvement in a secretive club, a group that few knew anything about, but whose members were powerful, influential figures in the town. The more Sarah and Michael dig into this group, the more they start to suspect that Lily may have stumbled upon something much bigger than she realized, something that could cost her her life. Each new lead introduces new faces into the investigation. A wealthy businessman with ties to the local government, a former high school friend of Lily's who seems to know more than he's letting on, and a seemingly harmless librarian who's been acting strangely since the day Lily disappeared. But the deeper they get, the more they realize that everyone has something to hide, and the truth seems to slip further away with each passing day. Just when they think they've found a lead that might crack the case wide open, a chilling phone call shakes them both to their core. The voice on the other end is distorted, but the message is clear: stop looking or you'll be next. The hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand up as she realizes just how deep this conspiracy runs and how dangerous it's becoming. It's no longer just about solving a missing person case. It's about survival. And the more they dig, the more the line between ally and enemy begins to blur. With time running out, Sarah and Michael must navigate a maze of lies, betrayal, and shifting loyalties to uncover the truth before it's too late. But just when they think they have a lead that could expose everything, a tragic event shakes them to their core, and they're left questioning if they've been chasing the wrong person all along. Could the true mastermind behind the plot be someone they've trusted all along? Or is there someone else pulling the strings from the shadows? The deeper they go, the more the answers seem to elude them. And with each new twist, the mystery only grows more tangled. They had been pawns in a much larger game, and the rules had changed without them even realizing. With each new twist, their world became more dangerous, more unstable. And just when they thought they were closer to the truth, everything shifted again, leaving them in the dark with more questions than ever. Where was Lily? Who was John really working for? And what did they know that Sarah and Michael didn't? The truth, it seemed, was more elusive than they had ever imagined. And the cost of uncovering it was far higher than they were prepared to pay. The days that followed John's revelation were nothing short of a blur. Sarah and Michael found themselves in a spiraling whirlwind of confusion and paranoia. Every decision they made felt like a step into the unknown, and the weight of the truth, however distorted and incomplete, was bearing down on them with increasing force. They had always prided themselves on their ability to uncover the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. But this was different. The truth they were chasing was elusive, slipping through their fingers every time they thought they were getting closer. And with each new revelation, the stakes became higher, more personal, more deadly. The ultimatum came late one evening, when Sarah received an encrypted email that sent a chill through her entire body. It was a message from an unknown sender, one that was clearly keeping tabs on everything she and Michael were doing. The message was short, but the implications were enough to stop her cold. You're getting too close. If you want to see your loved ones again, you'll walk away. Leave this case behind. Or else. She stared at the screen, feeling the blood drain from her face. Michael was already at her side, having seen her reaction, but when she turned to face him, she saw the same fear reflected in his eyes. The fear of what they were about to face. They had been warned, and the consequences were clear. If they didn't back off, their lives and the lives of those they cared about would be in jeopardy. But backing off wasn't an option anymore. Not for Sarah, not for Michael. They had come too far to turn back now. Sarah's heart raced as she grappled with the decision. The choice was excruciatingly simple, but the consequences of either path were unthinkable. She couldn't abandon this case. She couldn't just walk away and let the people behind it get away with whatever they were hiding. But what about Michael? What about Emma, who was still so lost and fragile after everything she'd been through? The fear of what might happen to them if Sarah chose to keep pushing forward gnawed at her every second. She didn't want to lose anyone else. But at the same time, she knew that if she didn't finish what she had started, there would be no end to it. No resolution. No justice. It was a decision that ripped at the core of her, a choice between what was right and what was safe. But it wasn't just about Michael and Emma anymore. Sarah had come to realize that she had a deeper connection to this case than she could have ever expected. The more she learned, the more she began to suspect that her own family's past was somehow intertwined with the mystery of Lily's disappearance. The unease she had been feeling for weeks began to crystallize into something undeniable. Her father, a man she had trusted her whole life, had known more about the secrets at play than he had ever let on. She had always believed that her father's past was a closed chapter, a time before she was born, filled with things she didn't need to know. But what if the truth was far darker than she could have imagined? What if he had been involved in the very conspiracy that had consumed her life? It was a thought that haunted her, one she tried to push aside, but now it was impossible to ignore. If she confronted her father about his involvement, it would destroy the last semblance of trust they had. It would tear their family apart. But if she didn't, if she kept letting him off the hook, she knew she would never be able to move forward. It felt like no matter what she chose, she would lose something precious. The truth would come at a steep price. At the same time, Michael was wrestling with his own impossible choices. His mind had been consumed by the idea that Emma was no longer just an innocent bystander in all of this. As much as he wanted to believe that his daughter was just a victim, her strange behavior, her fear, her cryptic warnings was beginning to convince him otherwise. Michael had always trusted his gut, and it was telling him that there was more to Emma's disappearance than she was letting on. The closer he got to the truth, the more he began to wonder if Emma wasn't just caught in the crossfire, but had been involved from the very beginning. His worst fear, losing her, had already started to become a reality. Emma had become distant, unreachable. And now, with everything they were uncovering, Michael couldn't shake the growing suspicion that she might be hiding something crucial from him. Was she protecting someone? Was she involved in the conspiracy in ways that he couldn't see? The thought of confronting her, of asking her directly, if she knew more than she was letting on, terrified him. If she was hiding something, if she was involved in something dangerous, then he wasn't sure what he would do. The love he had for his daughter collided violently with his need to know the truth. He wasn't ready to face what that might mean. But if he didn't confront her, would he ever truly understand what had happened to her during the time she'd been missing? In the dead of night, when the weight of their decisions pressed down on them like a physical force, Sarah and Michael met, both struggling with the same dilemma: stay in the dark or risk everything to uncover the truth. They sat in silence, the air between them thick with the unspoken. They had both been given choices that threatened to unravel everything they had fought for. And yet, despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, there was one undeniable fact: they couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when they were so close to uncovering the truth, even if it meant sacrificing everything they loved. As Sarah stared at Michael, the weight of the choice hanging heavy in her chest, she realized that the consequences of their next steps would change everything. One wrong move, and it could all be over. The investigation, their lives, their families, it would all shatter in an instant. And in that moment, with the gravity of it all bearing down on her, Sarah understood that no matter what choice they made, they were already in too deep to turn back. The cost of the... For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Sarah and Michael stood frozen, the weight of John's betrayal sinking in. Every piece of the puzzle had led them to this point, but the revelation that John had been working against them all along shattered everything they thought they knew. The conspiracy they were up against was so much bigger than they had ever imagined. It wasn't just about Lily or Emma or even the Matthews family. It was about an entire network of people, and John was only one small part of it. The entire system was rigged, and the stakes were higher than either of them had realized. With John's weapon pointed at them, and no way of knowing who else was involved, Sarah and Michael were standing at the edge of a cliff, with nothing but the dark unknown below. Everything was on the line now, and the only thing left to do was make a choice whether to fight back or let the conspiracy crush them. You said. The air was thick with the stench of betrayal. Every breath Sarah took feeling heavier than the last. The gun in John's hand was the only thing keeping her and Michael rooted in place, the tension crackling like static electricity in the cold, silent room. John's face, once a trusted ally, now appeared as a stranger, his eyes hard with a coldness that didn't belong there. You don't know what you're up against. John's voice was low, clipped, as he stepped into the room, the door slamming shut behind him. None of you do. The words hung in the air, like a warning, but neither Sarah nor Michael had any intention of backing down. They had already come too far. They had already lost too much. The truth, whatever it was now more important than their fear. You're working for them, aren't you? Sarah finally managed to speak, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. She had always trusted John. She had believed in him, in the partnership they'd built during the investigation. But now it was clear he had been a pawn, just like the rest of them. The system they had uncovered was so much larger than they had ever realized, and John was just another piece of the puzzle, another cog in the machine that ran everything behind the scenes. John didn't respond right away. His gaze shifted to the gun in his hand, his grip tightening around it, before he let out a frustrated breath and lowered it slightly. His eyes met Sarah's, and for just a moment, she could see the conflict behind the anger, the hesitation, the guilt, the truth that he had been hiding all along. You don't understand, he said quietly, almost apologetically. This isn't just about us, about you or me. It's bigger than you think. Your father, he was involved from the start. He was part of all of this, and you're just walking right into the heart of it. There's no way out now. Sarah's blood ran cold. The mention of her father hit her like a slap in the face. It had always been clear that something about her family's past was tied to this case, but she had never imagined that her father, the man who had always been her rock, her protector, could have been complicit in something so monstrous. But the more John spoke, the more it became clear that the conspiracy wasn't just about corruption or greed. It wasn't even about power. It was about control over everything Sarah and Michael had believed to be true, control over their lives, their families, and their futures. The people at the top of the pyramid had orchestrated every part of this, from Lily's disappearance to Emma's role, and now Sarah and Michael were tangled in it all, unable to escape. Your father, John repeated, a bitter edge to his voice. He's the one who set all of this in motion. He's the one who made the decisions that have led to all of this chaos. He's the reason Lily's still alive. She's not just a victim, she's the key to everything. Everything about Sarah's world shattered in that moment. Her father, the man who had always seemed untouchable, had been behind everything, working with Lyle Matthews, orchestrating a plot that spanned years, maybe even decades. But why? What was the endgame? What had they been fighting for all this time? Before she could process it all, Michael stepped forward, his voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and rage. You're telling us Lily's alive, and my daughter's involved in all this too? He couldn't believe it. None of it made sense. Emma, his little girl, was somehow mixed up in a conspiracy that reached far beyond their understanding. Joan's face hardened, and for the first time, Sarah saw a flicker of regret in his eyes. She doesn't have a choice, he said quietly, almost to himself. None of us did. But now you're in this with us. There's no way out. If you think you can walk away from this, you're wrong. The only thing left is to play the game. A heavy silence fell over the room, the tension unbearable. Joan's words echoed in Sarah's mind, but there was something else lingering, something that didn't sit right. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. John might have thought he was in control, but Sarah wasn't ready to let go of the fight just yet. She turned to Michael, their eyes locking for a brief moment, the unspoken bond between them stronger than any fear or doubt. If this was a game, then they would play it their way. "You're wrong," Sarah said suddenly, her voice filled with a newfound determination. "We're not playing by your rules anymore." And just as she spoke those words, the lights in the room flickered, casting the space in shadows. Joan's eyes widened in confusion, a crack of vulnerability crossing his face for the first time since they'd entered the room. And then, in an instant, everything changed. The door behind them slammed open with a deafening bang, and a figure stepped into the doorway, a figure they both knew, a figure they had never expected to see again. Emma. She stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear, but there was something else in her expression. Something cold, something dangerous. The gun in her hand was pointed directly at John. "Don't move," she said, her voice sharp, her hand steady as she aimed the weapon. The shock of it hit Sarah and Michael like a ton of bricks. Emma's sweet, innocent Emma had been playing a part all along. She was never the victim. She was never lost or confused. She had been playing them from the start. Joan's face twisted in disbelief as he looked from Emma to Sarah, his expression full of questions that no one had answers to. "Emma, no, what are you doing?" Emma didn't answer. She just took one slow step forward, her eyes locked on Joan's. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "but I've had enough of being your pawn." And in that moment, everything came crashing down. The conspiracy, the manipulation, the web of lies. Emma was at the center of it, not a victim, but a player. She had been working with John all along, the final piece to the puzzle. She had known far more than they had ever realized, and now she was taking control. The truth that Sarah had fought so hard to uncover had finally surfaced, but it was a truth that tore their world apart. There was no going back now, no escaping the choices they had made. But before any more words could be spoken, before the truth could fully sink in, the sound of distant sirens echoed through the walls, too close, too loud. The moment they'd all been dreading had arrived. The game was over. The sirens grew louder, but the world seemed to slow down around Sarah. Time felt like it was stretching out, her mind racing through everything that had happened. Everything she had learned, but it was hard to process any of it now. Her body felt heavy, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched Emma, gun still steady in her hand, her expression cold, detached. John, now a pawn like the rest of them, stood there with his hands up, confusion and anger flashing across his face. But it was clear to Sarah that this was not the man he used to be. He was no longer the ally they'd trusted. He was just another cog in a machine they could never have predicted. And the full weight of that realization settled like a stone in her stomach. The game, as Emma had said, was over, and yet, in this moment, it felt like it was just beginning. They had uncovered the truth, but the truth wasn't something simple or satisfying. It was a Pandora's box they couldn't close. There was no neat resolution, no way to put everything back together. It wasn't just about Lily anymore. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was about something far deeper, something that cut through the very fabric of the world they thought they knew. Emma's face was still hard as she stepped forward, eyes narrowing as she glanced between Sarah and John, a flash of uncertainty passing over her. She was holding the gun, yes, but it was clear that she was a far cry from the person she had once appeared to be. The sweet, innocent girl had been playing a part the entire time, but that didn't mean she had control. No one had control. Not really. They were all just pieces in a game that was far older, far bigger than any of them. "It's over, Sarah," Emma said quietly, her voice filled with a strange mixture of finality and regret. "You don't get to fix this. You never did." Sarah's stomach twisted as she looked at her, at the person she had once thought of as family. The betrayal stung, but it wasn't just the betrayal, it was the truth of it all. The world they lived in wasn't the world they thought it was. It was something else entirely. And even if they walked away now, there would always be another lie, another twist to uncover. The sound of the approaching sirens pierced the air, snapping Sarah out of her thoughts. The decision was already made. No matter how she felt, no matter how much she wanted to walk away from this nightmare, the truth had already cost them too much. It had already cost Emma, cost John, and cost them all their peace. The cops would be here any second, and in this mess of secrets and lies, there was no telling who would walk free. And yet, she had been the one they had fought for in the beginning. The irony of it all crushed her. But as the sirens grew nearer, as the weight of it all pressed down on her, Sarah felt something shift within her. It was a small shift, something imperceptible, but it was enough to make her stand taller. She had spent so much of her life chasing answers, trying to uncover the truth about Lily, about her father, about what had really been happening behind the scenes. But in the end, she realized there were no simple answers. There was no one to blame, but the system that had been built to protect the guilty and punish the innocent. She could chase it forever, but she would never get the peace she thought she wanted. The world didn't work like that. People didn't work like that. As Emma backed toward the window, ready to make her escape before the cops arrived, Sarah found herself faced with the impossible decision: to let it go, to walk away, or to keep pushing, to keep fighting for a justice that didn't exist. But then, just before Emma could turn and disappear into the night, she stopped. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, a moment of vulnerability, a brief flicker of the girl she used to be before the darkness had consumed her completely. "I didn't have a choice," Emma whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "None of us did. But I'm not going to let it destroy you. Not anymore." And with that, Emma disappeared into the night, leaving Sarah and Michael to stand there, unsure of what would come next. The sirens were almost upon them now, and as the sound grew louder, it was clear that no one was walking away clean from this. Not John, not Emma, not even Sarah or Michael. The truth was never meant to be uncovered. But in the end, it had been. And it had cost them everything. The last thing Sarah saw before the door flew open and the police stormed in was John's face, filled with rage and regret, his eyes pleading for something, anything. But Sarah didn't wait to see what happened next. She turned to Michael, the only person who had been there with her from the beginning. And in that moment, they both knew something they hadn't realized before. Some mysteries were never meant to be solved. Some truths were too dangerous to ever fully understand. The credits rolled as Sarah and Michael walked out into the dark, their faces stoic, but their hearts weighed down by everything they had learned. As they disappeared into the night, there was one last lingering question that would echo long after the story ended. Was the truth worth it? Was it ever worth it? The answer, in the end, was something only they could live with. But one thing was certain: the game was far from over.